the collective gets a love letter from Uncle Sam, what's funny is, the letter is the exact same letter that was given out during the Bush administration, word for word. They don't even bother rewriting these things. There's no creativity. Now remember, during the Bush administration, they also sent letters out to every collective. And back then, everyone just ignored them pretty much, except those collectives that felt shady. Seems like the better collectives tended to ignore it, and the shadier or maybe not as confident of themselves collectives ran for the hills. It seemed back then that most of the landlords, they wanted to ignore it. They had the most to lose, they owned the property, and yet they ignored these letters. And in part, maybe some of them were focused on the money, because some landlords really do gouge collectives and they're focused on money. Other landlords are brave civil rights heroes, to me, that they're willing to allow collectives to exist, even though they themselves could go to jail, lose their property, and have a money fine. So, what do people do when they get the letter? Okay, first of all, the collective will probably need to communicate with their landlord to make sure they're on the same page, to make sure the landlord's comfortable with whatever the collective wants to do. Some of the landlords will take that opportunity to try to evict or to tell the collective they've got to go. Now, when that happened during Bush, I was able to get a California Superior Court judge to say, no, landlord, you can't evict because of this federal letter. In fact, there were about 20 evictions that we successfully opposed just by saying, no, we're following state law, nothing's changed. You knew this was illegal then federally. No change in law, no, you can't get out of your contract. Besides, there's another doctrine called in peri delicto, which means if two people are equally guilty, the judge shouldn't help either of them. So this landlord knew it was medical marijuana then, why should he be able to get an eviction now? So that worked perfectly good during the Bush administration, all the way up to a trial by a judge, and I did it myself with an eviction judge downtown. Now though, ironically, with Obama, the pro-medical marijuana president, I think things are much worse. No, things are worse. I was using that was my ironic voice. The pro-medical marijuana. He's destroyed people's lives. There's a lot of people going to jail right now. There's raids going on right now. And it's going to be worse than we think with Obama. With Romney. Obama. I think it's a very dangerous time for those people. And here's the first thing I would say to them if they came to my office. You'll have to govern yourself accordingly, or you'll be taking whatever risks there are for staying open. Because this office can't be responsible for your choice on that. I don't know what the feds may do. So I always remind people that they come to my office, they will have to make up their own mind. And then I proceed to counsel with them what could happen. But still there's some degree of, we don't know who they're going to go after. Could this be a bluff? Could this be the real thing? Are they going to go after just the people that are close to schools or that have on-site consumption? Or are they going to go for everybody in a town? Or what's going to happen? So LA just invited the feds in. We know they have cross-deputized people. We know they have fusion centers. We know they have internet, and we know they look in the magazines. They know where the collectives are. They know the names of the people who have them. We've been tricked by the city into these registrations over and over again with multiple disclosures. Who's your management? Who runs things? Let's see your bills. Let's see your documents. They have them all, let's assume. And yet they don't go after everyone, so now you want to rationalize. Well, maybe they'll just go after the bad guys, maybe we're okay. It's like driving to Vegas, you're speeding, but everyone's speeding, You have to decide for yourself, each collective, whether they have the stomach for this or not. And that's really all I can, in the end, all I can do is put it back on the same beautiful people who are trying to help people and say, look, it's getting worse and worse. It's up to you to decide what it is that you can and cannot handle doing. But if you got the letter and you have any weakness right now, and maybe you were thinking of closing, and maybe you've lost sleep for a few years, maybe this is your chance to gracefully go off into the sunset and let the bullies think they won. Maybe then they'll leave you alone later. So there is something to be said for the kung fu attitude. The guy that walks away from fights and he just keeps helping people in each village and he never really lets the bad guys take him into that ring. you know? So I respect anyone who makes any of those choices, and it's not a weak thing to close. There will be someone else that will help patients tomorrow. I don't believe in the messianic complex for people. They need to save the world. Oh, if I close, what will happen to all my patients? Don't worry. They will learn to grow. Someone else will get them their medicine. You must think of yourself, your family, your kids, and all the choices you need to make as a group right now. And although I respect your worry about that, you're not the Messiah. You don't need to save the world. You'll have to make decisions for you right now. They addressed a letter to you. There's a certified letter from the federal government to you. So.
Thank you.
He who fights and runs away lives to fight another day. And that's kind of what happens sometimes in medical marijuana. People will stay open as long as they can. I think another thing that I'd like to just mention before we take another question is kind of put this in perspective, and maybe Shona will mention this a little bit in San Francisco. They've taken it to the other level in San Francisco. They're not just sending the threat letter, they're filing motions to seize the property. Okay? So what we have here is now just a threat on the landlords is actual legal action in San Francisco, and as a result, 11 dispensaries have shut down in a city that normally had about 28. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, if it happens, the very first time one of those U.S. attorneys actually files a motion to seize a piece of property.